There we go. Okay, so just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded. So please keep your cameras turned off that'll help us make sure that you don't appear on the recording. And yeah, so that's about it. Keep your cameras turned off and please keep yourself muted unless you need to ask a question. If you would like to ask a question, you can either put it in the chat or you can unmute and ask the question. It's up to you. Either way is fine. So let me get the slides on the screen. Okay. So I hope everybody can see my slides. Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We are here today to talk about supporting someone with mental health challenges. And we are Gladstone Psychiatry and Wellness. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Gladstone in just a sec. First, we're going to start with mindfulness. We are this presentation is coming to you from Gladstone's DBT program. And as you may know, everything in DBT starts with mindfulness, and this is no different. So we are going to get started with mindfulness now. So today for mindfulness, I want us to do a real simple exercise called paced breathing. The way that works is you're going to pick any pace you would like as long as the exhale is longer than the inhale. That's really important. And it has to do with activating your parasympathetic nervous system. When we breathe on our inhales, our heart rate increases a teeny tiny bit, and on our exhales, it decreases a teeny tiny bit. So when we make our exhale longer than our inhale, and we do that repeatedly for a bunch of breaths in a row, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, brings our heart rate down, and helps us to feel calmer. Okay, so this is an observe mindfulness exercise, meaning that we are observing things using our five senses. So, what I want you to do as you breathe is I want you to simply pay attention to the sensation of the air coming in and the air flowing out. If your attention wanders away for a moment or other thoughts enter your mind, that's normal. It happens to everyone. Please simply notice that that happened and then gently return your attention to your breath, to the sensation of the breath going in and out. Does anybody have any questions about how to do this mindfulness exercise? Okay, then let's begin. I'm gonna do a pace of 4 seconds for inhale, 6 seconds for exhale. You guys pick any pace that you want as long as the exhale is longer than the inhale. And I'm gonna mute myself and set a timer for 2 minutes, and I will let you know when the time is up. Okay, ready and begin. Okay, that's time. Um, would anybody like to share something that they noticed during that mindfulness exercise? It's okay if you don't want to. If you would like to, you're welcome to share or any feedback about my instructions. Okay, someone says more relaxed. That's great. Glad to hear it. Okay, well, I hope we are all feeling mindful and ready to learn. A couple more comments. Um, aware of how I'm feeling. Someone says, sorry, I'm late. No worries. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's continue. Let's move on to our lesson for today. So, let me see if I can make this full screen. There we go. I hope you guys can still see the slides. All right, so who are we? Who's talking to you today? I'm Nicole Roeder, and I am one of the DBT therapists at Gladstone Psychiatry and Wellness. Here at Gladstone, we have a comprehensive DBT program that offers full fidelity to the model developed by Dr. Marshall Linehan, who was the creator of DBT. So what does that mean? Lots of people have a little bit of training in DBT or do use some of the DBT skills in their work or maybe offer a DBT skills group. And that's not what this is. We are a comprehensive DBT program. We're doing the whole DBT model, which is what has been shown in clinical trials to be the most effective way to use DBT therapy to treat disorders of emotional dysregulation. We were the first program in Maryland to be certified by the DBT Linehan Board of Certification. That means that Dr. Linehan's group, her board, did a rigorous evaluation of our program and determined that we are providing DBT in the same manner that Dr. Linehan intended for it to be used in her when she created it. We offer DBT for adults and for adolescents age 14 and up. Our program includes individual therapy, group skills training. For adolescents, the parents also participate in the group skills training and 24-hour phone coaching. In addition to that, our DBT team meets for consultation every Monday. That is also part of comprehensive DBT, having the consultation team. And we're starting a skills training group that's just for family members. And it's 12 weeks long. We're going to do several rounds. So, well, continuous rounds. Hopefully, we'll do a round and then another round as more people are interested. But it's a 12-week program. The first cohort is starting in May, and it's basically kind of like a longer, more comprehensive version of this webinar. We'll reteach you the DBT skills to help you support your family member, your friends, or loved ones who are either in our program or they don't have to be in our program. Eventually, we will be offering it to family members of people who are not in our program pretty soon. But it's for family members and loved ones of people who are in the um, people who would typically need DBT therapy, people who have either borderline personality disorder or some other mental health problem that involves intense emotional dysregulation. And our adolescent program also includes family therapy and parent coaching when clinically indicated, when requested, when needed. Okay. Okay. So what are our goals for today? Today, what we're hoping to impart to you is some tools to help you understand your role in supporting your loved one's mental health. So what is your job here, right? Help you learn effective communication strategies to use with your loved one. We're also going to learn about invalidating statements to avoid. There are a lot of common statements that a lot of people make without intending to sound invalidating, and they do. So we're going to tell you about those. We're going to help you learn how to set and enforce boundaries and talk about when to seek emergency help. So, what are some challenges that people face when supporting loved ones with mental health needs? Well, number one, a lot of people are really scared they're going to say the wrong thing. And it's understandable to be afraid of that because lots of times you might say something to your loved one and their response is, pretty intense. Um, you've said things to them before, and immediately afterward, they blew up at you. They um, did something to hurt themselves. They had a relapse on some behavior that they were trying to stop doing. And so you're really scared. Like, what if I say the wrong thing and that causes a problem? And that's understandable to be afraid of that. Um, there's also often frustration that the help doesn't seem to be helping. And this can really happen to anyone, right? You're trying to help somebody, you really love them, you want to be as supportive as possible, and you do everything that you can think of that you think would be helpful, and it doesn't seem to be working. So that can be really frustrating. And then another thing that gets in the way, another challenge is burnout. There's such a high level of need sometimes with the people that you're trying to support that it can feel just really overwhelming. And then you end up getting burned out. Oop. Okay, so let's talk about what your role is. So your role is going to depend on a number of things. Number one, what is your relationship with the person? If you're their parent or their spouse, then your role is, if you're their parent, your role is going to be different than if you're their spouse, or if you're their adult child, or if you're their friend, or you're their doctor, let's say their teacher, right? Your role depends a lot on what your relationship is with that person. It also depends on what the person wants or needs from you. So, everybody's individual, everybody has their own needs. Not everyone has the same needs. And they also might have needs that are already being fulfilled by somebody else, so they don't need those particular needs fulfilled by you, right? And sometimes people don't want your help, right? So, your role depends a lot on what help the person wants or needs. It depends on your helping skills. We all have different strengths. You might be a great listener, and live too far away to help with practical things. Or maybe you are really great at being the one to come over and help with chores in the house or bring meals or schedule doctor appointments, and you don't feel comfortable sitting and having a conversation and trying to listen. Whatever your helping skills are, then that is going to factor into what your role is. And then, of course, your limits. We all have our own personal limits or boundaries, some people call them. And, we don't want you to commit to doing something that you're not comfortable doing. So it's important to think about what are your limits. Okay, so what is not your role? The one
Can I just give
thing,
you a shout out really quickly? It does not seem that the slides are advancing.
oh,
It's still on the page that says, "Who are we?" And someone commented that there is a block at the bottom that says, "Ask AI Assistant," that's blocking part of the screen.
okay. Let me see what I can do about that. Um, okay. Maybe I shouldn't have done that full screen mode thing. Okay.
And by the way, for everyone, these slides will be available after this presentation, so you'll definitely be able to see the slides that Nicole was referencing just a moment ago.
Okay. So let's see if we can fix this. I'm not going to do the full screen mode this time. Okay, so I backed up a couple of slides. Can you guys see a slide that says challenges in supporting loved ones with mental health needs at the top?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. And then now can you see one that says your role depends on?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, great. Um, Okay, so I'm just not going to do the full screen mode. Hopefully that'll work better. Okay, so what is not your role? It's not your job to fix or treat your loved one's mental illness. These conditions are complex health problems that require professional treatment. Even if you're a professional, I'm a professional, I'm a DBT therapist, and if somebody in my family needed this kind of help, I would take them to their own therapist because in fact, I do have people in my family who need therapy and they go to their own therapist. And when they're having specific kind of problems that really require professional intervention, I don't try to be their therapist because it doesn't work. Even if I wanted it to, it wouldn't work because my role in that person's life is different and your relationship with them just changes the dynamic when you're trying to have these conversations with people. Okay, so your job is not to fix or treat your loved one's mental illness. Okay, so let's learn about some communication strategies. The first and most effective communication tool that we have is validation. If you don't learn anything else at all from this website, this webinar, I want you to learn validation and at least some beginning validation skills. It's the most important and effective communication tool we have because it helps create space for your loved one to express their feelings without immediately jumping to solutions, which often causes people to feel invalidated or like you're not really taking their pain or their emotions seriously, or maybe not agreeing with, not believing them, or not thinking that what they're communicating to you makes sense or is correct. And that can feel really frustrating. A lot of times when people aren't being validated, they keep on repeating themselves. They keep on repeating the emotional respect, the they keep on repeating their expression of their emotion, whether it's physically or verbally or what have you. They keep repeating it over and over again, waiting to hear some evidence that you've understood and validated how they're feeling. And it can just feel really disconcerting to people when they don't get that. So, validation is super important. So, why validate? Well, there are a whole bunch of reasons. Here are some of them. One is that it improves relationships. When you are, talking to somebody who, whether they're in your family, they're a friend, they're a coworker, whomever, and they communicate back to you, yeah, I understand what you're saying. That makes sense to me. You feel better about that person, right? So when you validate the people that you love, the people in your life, um, it improves relationships. It also reduces negative emotions and the pressure to prove who is right. Okay, so think about that for a minute. Someone is expressing to you, I'm so upset about this thing. And they're crying or they're shouting or they're whispering or saying the reasons that they're upset, right? They're saying, I'm upset because of this, because of that. And it in that moment, it's not real relevant whether or not their reasons are accurate, right? What's relevant is that they're feeling pretty terrible, and you can see that they're feeling terrible, and there's definitely a reason for that, right? Whatever the reason, we don't maybe not don't know what the reason is, and we know that there is a reason for that. So when you validate and you say like, hey, I hear you, I can tell that you're really upset, and um, it makes sense that you're feeling this way, then they no longer feel that intense urge to prove to you that they're right to be upset. And it also reduces your urge to prove that you're right, right? Like, let's say this is happening during a disagreement. Um, they might say something like, I'm so upset because you're always criticizing me. And maybe you feel the urge to say, I'm not always criticizing you. Just yesterday, I told you that you did a really good job. Um, that's not going to help right now. And when you shift to validation, it reduces that urge to prove who's right. It also makes problem solving, closeness, and support possible. So, what do I mean by this? I just told you that validation is communicating to someone that their feelings make sense without immediately jumping to problem solving, right? So, why would I say that validation makes problem solving possible? Well, the reason is that people often, especially when they're in emotion mind, when their emotions have taken over and their emotions are so intense that they're very upset, their thinking part of their brain is not turned on at the moment. They're not capable of problem solving or rational thinking at that moment. Validation helps bring those emotions down so that they can get to a place where problem solving is possible. So, problem solving isn't a part of validation, it's something that can come later once you've validated them and helped the emotions come down. It also makes closeness and support possible for similar reasons. And invalidation hurts. If you've ever been in a situation where you tried to tell somebody that you were upset about something and they said, "Ugh, that's not a big deal," you probably know how this feels. Well, if somebody is invalidated frequently, many times throughout their lives, and especially when they're feeling very upset and dysregulated, it really hurts. And over time, that adds up. So, what do we validate? Well, we are going to work on finding the kernel of truth in whatever the person has communicated to you, right? So, in the example I gave a moment ago, I'm so upset because you're always criticizing me. We're going to look for what's true in that statement, the kernel of truth. So I'm going to just say, for argument's sake, that the person who said that, uh, the person that they're saying that to, let's say my loved one is saying that to me. They say, I'm so upset because you're always criticizing me. So let's say that it's not true that I'm always criticizing them. And maybe I even rarely criticize them. And just now I said something critical, right? So I might have the urge to say, no, I just said something critical just now, but most of the time I don't criticize you, right? That would be invalidating. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the kernel of truth in what they said. So the kernel of truth uh, often is the way the person is feeling, right? So I'm so upset because you're always criticizing me. The kernel of truth is that they're so upset. And it also might be true that I just now criticized them, right? So we find whatever is true and we validate that. We also only validate the valid and never the invalid. So I'm not going to say, you're right, I am always criticizing you, because that's not true. I'm only going to validate the valid, not the invalid. And a good rule of thumb is, if you can't figure out what the kernel of truth is, look to their feelings, beliefs, or thoughts that they're communicating right now. That is probably the kernel of truth. Okay. Any questions about what to validate so far? Okay. Um, okay. There we go. All right. So remember, every invalid response makes sense in some way. Okay, so whatever the person is communicating, it makes sense in some way. It may be difficult for you to figure out how it makes sense, and it still makes sense in some way. It's also true that validation is not necessarily agreeing, right? So if my loved one says, I'm so upset because you're always criticizing me, and I say, okay, yeah, I can see that you're really upset and that being criticized would make you upset. That makes sense. That doesn't mean that I'm agreeing that I always criticize them, right? And it also doesn't mean that I like it or that you like it, right? I don't have to approve of my loved one's behavior or like what they're doing in order to validate it. I can still listen and pay attention to what they're communicating and figure out what makes sense about it and validate it. Okay, so let's talk about how to validate. In DBT, we teach 6 levels of validation. You don't have to memorize the 6 levels or know what all of them are. I'm going to go over them. Um, and, I want you to take away from it what you can. So the first level of validation involves simply paying attention. So being awake, noticing what the person's communicating. We're paying attention to their thoughts, feelings, and actions. Now, obviously, you can't directly observe their thoughts or feelings. You can observe their actions, but you can observe what about their thoughts and feelings are they communicating to you. The second level of validation is reflecting back by describing those thoughts, feelings, and behaviors with non-judgmental language, right? So, um, if my loved one says, um, I'm going to switch to a different example now. So let's say I have a friend who tells me that she's really ugly and she can't leave the house because people will see her and then she'll be humiliated. Um, I can reflect that back by saying basically what she just said in my own words. You don't want to parrot it because that sounds kind of like a canned response or like you're reading off a piece of paper. It doesn't sound natural. So I would paraphrase it back by saying something like, okay, so you're saying that you think if you go outside, then people will see you and think that you're ugly and that you'd feel embarrassed by that, right? And I would put it in the form of a question like that to make sure that they have the opportunity to correct me if I'm not right about that. And putting it in the form of a question is super important for level 3, which we call reading minds. This means that you're being sensitive to what's not being said. So your loved one, let's say my friend said to me, no, I can't go out there. People will see me, and they're crying and their body language shows that they're trying to hide themselves. So I might say, hey, are you feeling embarrassed about going inside outside? They didn't say they were embarrassed, but I'm guessing from their body language and from the context that they might be. So I might say, hey, it sounds like you're saying you're feeling embarrassed about going outside and about people seeing you. Is that what you mean by that? So we're looking for what's not being said and trying to reflect back what we think that might mean, and then asking for clarification. It's really important to be open to correction. If I were to say to my friend, um, oh, so are you embarrassed? Do you think you might be embarrassed if people see what you look like? And she says, no, 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 that's not it. I'm just too tired to go out. I really just don't want to leave the house because I'm so tired. I'm not going to say, no, I think you're embarrassed. I think you really don't want people to see you because that would be really invalidating, right? If they tell me I'm wrong, I'm going to immediately course correct. Okay, because that's really important for validation. Level 4 validation is understanding how their emotions or thoughts make sense based on their history, their state of mind, or the current events that are happening right now in this situation. Okay, so back to our example with my friend who doesn't want to go outside. Um, I might know that that the last time they went to a big public event, um, somebody laughed at them. Somebody pointed at them and laughed and said that, like, why would you wear that? It looks terrible, or something like that, right? Somebody said something insulting about their looks. So I might say, I can understand why you'd be nervous about that, especially after what happened last time. It makes sense that you would feel nervous about going out now. I wouldn't want to experience that again either, right? Or it might make sense based on their state of mind. Maybe right now they're in the middle of a depressive episode and they've been feeling depressed for 2 weeks now. So I might say, yeah, you know what? I understand that you don't want to go out because you're feeling really depressed. You've been depressed for a few weeks, right? I understand why um, that would cause you to not want to go out. Or current events, that means I'm not talking about the news, even though that might be a really good reason to validate somebody. It might be a good reason for somebody to feel upset, right? But I mean, like, what's happening right now in this situation, and is that something that would cause just about anybody to experience those feelings? So, let's say that uh, I have my husband comes home from work and he says, "Oh, I am so mad at my boss. He just yelled at me and said something really humiliating in front of the entire team." Well, you know what? I think lots of people would be angry if that happened to them. So that's a real easy way to validate based on current events. Yeah, that's something that I think would make anybody angry. I can understand why that would make you feel angry. That's level 4 validation. Okay. All right. So level 5 validation involves acknowledging the valid by saying it out loud or giving functional validation. So functional validation is like, um, doing something that validates that person's point of view. So, like the classic example is if I say I'm cold, giving me a blanket is functional validation, or giving me a jacket is functional validation. Um, and um, it's really important to do the functional validation when possible, or at least to not omit it, right? Because sometimes there's not really a functional validation that you can give, but when there is, if you don't give the functional validation, it can feel pretty invalidating. Like imagine one of my coworkers gives this example a lot. It always makes me chuckle. Like imagine I stepped on your foot and you go, ow. And I say, wow, it must really hurt to have me stomping on your foot, but I don't remove my foot. That's not going to feel validating to you, right? And then level 6 validation is treating the other person as equal and not fragile or incompetent, and also not one-upping them, which I'm going to get to in one sec. So these are um, two really similar things. So I'm going to treat them as equal, and I'm going to do this with anybody that I'm validating, regardless of what my relationship is with them, even if they're my child. When I'm validating them, I'm going to treat them as equal, yeah, your feelings matter, right? If you know, Even if my kids are complaining about what we have for dinner, right? Let's say one of my kids is complaining about it. I have a child who really, really doesn't like shrimp, and I have um, 3 other children who love shrimp. So I don't make shrimp for dinner super often, and I do occasionally because, I think it's fair that everybody should get to have what they like every now and then. And I also think it's fair that we shouldn't have something for dinner frequently that one of my kids really hates. So having, um, if we're having shrimp for dinner and my daughter says, "Look, I hate shrimp," I'm going to say, "Yeah, you know what, honey? I know you really hate shrimp. I really appreciate you being willing to come to the table tonight, even though we're having something you don't like. And um, we probably also have something that she does like on the table, like some salad or some pasta or something like that." So I'm going to treat her like her opinion and her feelings are just as important as everybody else's. I'm also not going to treat people as fragile or incompetent. I'm not going to be like, "You know what? Let me do this for you because this is too hard for you." Right? Yeah, I understand that you don't want to go out, so let me go and pick up your prescriptions for you or something like that. It's too much for you. I'm not gonna have you do that. That would be treating them as fragile or incompetent, and that feels invalidating. And we also don't one up or one down. We're not competing for who has the hardest life, right? So I'm not going to say, oh, well, you think that's bad? Listen what happened to me, right? Okay, any questions about how to validate? Okay. If you do have a question later, you can feel free to add it to the chat and we'll do our best to answer. Okay, so invalidation hurts. I mentioned this before, and it's worth repeating that studies consistently demonstrate that people who were invalidated experienced stronger physiological arousal, more intense negative emotions, and had more difficulty labeling and understanding their emotions. It destroys relationships and it makes behavior more volatile. Frequent invalidation can even be traumatizing. I have personally treated people who have PTSD caused by frequent invalidation. And it's a real seriously stressful symptoms that they get from that PTSD. Um, Even if it doesn't cause PTSD, it still really hurts. So if you're thinking, I don't want to validate when my loved one is angry and yelling at me because that's not cool. They can't do that. So I'm going to tell them just sit down and shut up. It's not okay for you to talk to me that way. Keep in mind, like, you may have the right to do that, and it's not going to have the effect that you want. If you invalidate them in those moments, it's going to cause their physiological arousal to go up, meaning their heart rate's going to increase, their muscles are going to get tenser, their jaw's going to clench, and their emotions are going to get a lot more intensely negative. Okay. So here are some invalidating statements to avoid. And these are things that I think most of us say every now and then without intending to be hurtful. So that's the reason that we're sharing them here to let you know, yeah, this can be hurtful if you say this. So everything happens for a reason. You just need to stay positive, or, oh, it's not that bad. These communicate to people like what you're experiencing is kind of small and not a big deal. It might, even though right now you feel like your hair's on fire and everything's terrible and you want to run away screaming, it's really not that bad. So you're just, you're being dramatic. Calm down. You just need to stay positive communicates that, or others have it worse, or have you tried exercising or medication, or excuse me, meditation or this supplement? Um, that implies that if they would just do this one simple thing, stay positive, or remember that other people have it worse, or exercise a little bit more, then all their mental health problems would be solved. And that's just not true, right? So it makes it sound like their problems are really small, and the real reason that they're upset is because of something that's wrong with them. Okay, so um, so let's talk about practical ways to support your loved ones. Okay, so some things that you can do only if they want the help are assisting with daily tasks, accompanying them to appointments. Sometimes people feel more comfortable going to see a therapist if somebody comes with them. Um, I've had people contact me and say, like, oh, you know, my daughter is interested in DBT therapy, um, but she doesn't like making phone calls, so I'm making this phone call for her. Now, I will say, going back to that level 6 validation, not treating them as fat fragile, I don't want you to help them with tasks that they really are perfectly capable of completing themselves. Or excuse me, I don't want you to do tasks for them that they're perfectly capable of doing themselves. It's totally fine to sit next to them and be a support person, or to say, like, you've got hours of housework to do. Let me pitch in and help to make it take less time for you. Or let me go sit next to you at your appointment so that you feel more comfortable being there. Assisting and being there and being supportive isn't the same as treating them as fragile. if they want the help. If they don't want the help and you say, why don't I come with you to your appointment so you feel more comfortable, then they might feel like you're treating them as fragile, right? Or assisting with applying for accommodations is another big one. And this is especially true if you're their parent, right? And maybe they're a teenager or a young adult who's never applied for accommodations before. They don't know how to do that. That could be something that you could be really helpful with. And part of the way that you could not treat them as fragile is have them sit down and help you with the applications. You know, say like, why don't I show you how to do this? So next time you need to, you're able to do it yourself, if that's possible. I know that's not always possible. Okay. All right. So this is a part of the presentation when we're going to talk about, and there is that Ask AI Assistant thing. Oh my goodness. I just clicked on. I'm trying to hide it and I don't know why it just won't go away. I'm sorry. I don't know how to make that go away. I'll tell you what it says under that part, and we're going to email out the slides like Rebecca said. So what are your limits? So, like I was saying at the beginning, it's really important for you to know your limits and to not violate your limits. Because if you violate your own limits, you're going to end up feeling burned out, right? And it's also true that a lot of people have a lot of difficulty identifying what their limits are until they've been crossed, right? Like, I may not have ever thought about before that I don't want somebody shouting at me in the middle of the grocery store while I'm shopping until somebody shouts at me in the middle of the grocery store while I'm shopping, right? So you might not know what your limits are until they've been crossed, and you can get some sort of an idea of what they are by asking yourself these questions. So the first one, what am I willing and unwilling to do? So for example, I'll listen and provide validation. I will not answer the phone after midnight. What behavior am I willing to accept? So I'm not willing to accept somebody yelling at me or insulting me, no matter who that person is. I'm not willing to. So if my loved one starts yelling at me or insulting me, I'm going to lovingly end the conversation, meaning I'm going to say, hey, okay, I'm not going to listen to you yell at me. I still love you. I'll talk to you later, and I'll hang up or walk away. Um, how much time do I have available to help? Don't commit to, um, you know, cleaning your loved one's apartment every week if you know that that's a 3 hour job and you don't have 3 hours a week to give, right? So think about how much help, how much time you have available to help. What will I do if I start to feel overwhelmed? There's nothing wrong with changing your mind about your limits, right? Um, let's say I do commit to helping my loved one clean their apartment every week, and I come over and I see, wow, this apartment is much messier than I thought it was, and it's going to take me a pretty long time to clean this up. And I'm starting to feel overwhelmed. So I need to know beforehand, what am I going to do if I start to feel overwhelmed myself? And then what will I do if this person, I can't even read what this slide says. I think it says, um, has this person ever done something in the past that violated my limits or that felt like it was going too far? That's a really important question, right? So that might help you to figure out like what are the specific limits I need to apply in this specific particular relationship with this person. Um, and I want to point something else out to you guys. This might be on my next slide. Yes, you really, really have to enforce your own limits. People often get confused about the way boundaries work. So they might think that the boundaries are for the other person, right? Um, and the truth is that if you don't enforce boundaries, they're not boundaries. It's unreasonable to expect somebody else to respect your boundaries if you don't respect them first. So let's say I have a boundary that I don't want calls after midnight, right? In order for that to really truly be my boundary or my limit, I have to turn off my phone at midnight or silence it and not answer the phone if somebody calls me. If somebody does call after midnight, that's they're not violating my boundaries. If I answer the phone, I'm violating my boundaries. Does that make sense? You are the only person who can violate your own boundaries. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay. Um, and really pay attention to signs of burnout. This is really important if you're the support person for somebody who has high needs of any kind. So watch out for symptoms like persistent fatigue, being tired all the time, irritability, especially with the person that you're supporting, or resentment toward that person, withdrawal from your own social connections. Any of these symptoms are signs that you need to adjust your level of involvement. Okay, so when do you seek emergency help? Okay, when does it stop being, I can sit here and validate you and have a conversation with you or help you clean up or help you make an appointment, and start being, I need to call somebody. So if they make suicidal statements or behaviors, I'm going to add a caveat to this, that if the person that you're supporting is in a comprehensive DBT program like ours, I would want your first suggestion to be to talk to the DBT therapist, because they can be really supportive with suicidal statements or behaviors, and lots of other people will, or lots of other helpers will immediately send you to the emergency room when that might not be necessary. And it's also true that you are not the person to decide whether or not it's necessary for them to seek emergency help unless you've had some kind of specialized training in that. Um, you need to talk to a professional. If they don't have a DBT therapist, you can call 988 or 911. If somebody is making suicidal statements, or they've made a suicide attempt, or they've written a suicide note, any behavior that gets a person closer to suicide is a suicidal behavior. Writing a note, updating their will, gathering pills that they could use to overdose, any of those kind of behaviors, those are what I mean by suicidal behaviors. If somebody has an inability to care for their basic needs, so somebody like they haven't showered or brushed their teeth or fed themselves regularly in a month, that indicates that they've lost the ability to care for their basic needs. Somebody is experiencing psychotic symptoms. So, psychotic symptoms are hallucinations and delusions. So, somebody starts believing that something's there that's not there, or they believe that something's true that's not true, like something. I don't mean like they think you're criticizing them and you're not. I mean, they believe like they're the king of France, or they believe that the government is no, I'm not going to use a government example right now, but they believe that aliens are following them or something like that. Those are psychotic symptoms. And then aggressive behavior that threatens safety. They're pulling a knife on you, they're chasing you around or chasing somebody else around. They're doing something that looks like they might be violent. That's a time to call for some help, 988 or 911. Any questions about that? Okay. All right. So let's do we have a little bit of time left. Let's do a quick um, practice exercise. So I'm going to read to you this scenario and ask a few questions, and you're free to unmute and respond, or respond in the chat. So Sandra is the 52-year-old mother of Marcella, who is a 24-year-old woman with bipolar disorder. Sandra is very worried after Marcella called her to say that she's dropping out of college and quitting her job. Sandra drives over to Marcella's apartment and lets herself in with her keys as usual. Inside, she sees that the apartment is very dirty and there are insects crawling all over the kitchen. Sandra finds Marcella in her bed, awake. She asks Marcella what's going on. Marcella replies nothing in a robotic tone. Sandra says, "You're not really quitting everything, are you?" And Marcella bursts into tears. She yells, "Why can't you ever be on my side?" Okay, so who can tell me, what can Sandra do or say to validate Marcella? Any thoughts? Yeah, you sounds like you're feeling alone right now. That's a great one. I love that. Great validating statement. Any other thoughts? That was a perfect one. I like that validating statement a lot. Um, okay. What are some practical ways that Sandra can support Marcella? Um, something that she could do is help her clean up, right? She could help her clean the apartment. Um, yeah, ask her what she's feeling and what she needs. Absolutely. And what are some ways that Sandra could set and maintain boundaries with Marcella? And this really depends a lot on what Sandra's own limits are. So imagine that you're in Sandra's position. Maybe think about what your limits might be. I think if I were in Sandra's position, what I might do is I might say, first ask myself, how much time do I have right now? And then I might say to her, hey, listen, I have a free hour. If you want, I can get to work on cleaning your kitchen. Would you like that? Right? And I could let her know that an hour is all that I have for today. And if she says something like, no, but could you just stay here for the rest of the day? And I know that I don't have the rest of the day. I'm going to have to say, I'm sorry, I can't stay for the rest of the day. I can stay for an hour. And then the next time I'm free is, tomorrow at noon, let's say. Okay. And I would probably start that statement actually with something a little bit more validating, like, uh, I can see that you would really like my support right now, and I would love to be able to give it to you. In fact, I love that I'm a person who you think of as somebody who could give you support. And I really love you and want to help you. I only have an hour right now, so I can stay for an hour. Then I can come back again tomorrow. I might say something like that. Does any, okay, since we're almost out of time, I want to just open this up for any questions. And I want to let you guys know that if you would like more information about our DBT program, all of you have my email. You can also email our main email address at dbt@gladstonepsych.com. It's right here on the screen. We also, like I said before, we have a group starting up. That's a DBT skills group for friends and family of people who have intense emotional dysregulation. So if you're interested in that group, please let me know that as well. Um, and I will help you get signed up. Any questions about anything at all to do with anything we talked about today or about our DBT program at all?
Do you ever make exceptions to the age restrictions?
Um, we do occasionally have people who are younger than 14. What is the specific, do you have a specific age question in mind?
My daughter is 13 and I guess a half.
Okay. Um, I would encourage you to go ahead and submit the application, and w- there's a decent chance we might be able to help you. I actually have a 13-year-old client right now. Um,
Very good.
and no, it does not require a clinical referral to enter the full program.
Thank you.
Mhm. Thank you. Anybody else? Any other questions?
Not so much a question as that I'm realizing that I have not really seen this way of interacting with someone modeled much in my life or in anything. I mean, like maybe bits and pieces here and there, but like the whole thing. And it's and even as someone who feels they are compassionate, it's it feels like a lot to learn.
Yeah, yeah, it is a lot to learn. And it can really feel kind of like not natural to talk that way, especially when in the validating way and avoiding the invalidating statements, it can feel unnatural to people. I, before I started doing DBT therapy, I must have said 1,000 times, oh, it's not that bad, right? I mean, lots of people say that, and they're not trying to be hurtful when they do that. Um, and it's also true that if you said that to most people who don't have an emotion dysregulation disorder, it might not bother them, right? Um, and but for people who have been consistently invalidated throughout their entire lives, which is most of the people that we see in the DBT program, um, it's like being stabbed with a tiny little pin, 1,000 tiny little pins, right? It adds up and it feels kind of awful, right? Um, yeah.
And could you tell me what are the emotion dysregulation disorders?
So,
If you already said it, I'm sorry. I can always Google it, but
so there's not like an official class of disorders called the dysregulation disorders or like a list. The disorders that we treat the most often are borderline personality disorder, just about any mood disorder like depression or bipolar,
okay.
right? Um, Anything that if you're noticing symptoms where the person is just getting very upset, um, and it seems like things that would not cause somebody else to be very upset causes them to be very upset, it probably qualifies.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. And then somebody asked about health insurance, and Christine answered in the chat. We accept Care First, Aetna, United, and Cigna. With if you have Blue Cross Blue Shield of Maryland, we're fully in network. If you have Blue Cross Blue Shield from another state or another insurance plan, then like Aetna, United, or Cigna, then we can accept your insurance and there will be an additional monthly fee because they don't cover the entire program. And if you contact us, would be happy to go over your specific insurance plan and how that would work. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so, so much for being here today. And thank you so, so much for supporting your loved ones. It's so important. And as a DBT therapist, I am just so grateful for you all being there for your loved ones. It really is very important. And I'm going to be sending out this recording and the slides as soon as Zoom is done processing the recording and all that. I'll be sending that out a little later. All right. Well, you guys have a wonderful day.
Thank
Bye bye.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.